Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young. It's a lot of hype around the Carolina Panthers right now as we are in the offseason. And it's a lot of hype around what they can do in free agency and in the NFL draft because they ended the season very strong. They did finish the season by being 5-12, but this was a major step up. To begin the year, Bryce Young was not a good quarterback. For the first two games, he looked terrible. His first pass against the New Orleans Saints this year was an interception. And he threw two interceptions in that matchup. In the first two games, 0 passing touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And Bryce Young got benched in favor of Andy Dalton. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of what happened with this season, we have to take a step back. You see, the reason why Bryce Young got benched so early on in his sophomore year, for one, when they selected him with the first overall pick, they had high hopes for Bryce Young. At the time, the Carolina Panthers front office, they felt like they were just a quarterback away. So they traded DJ Moore and some first round picks to go acquire Bryce Young with the first overall pick. In his rookie season, well, it was terrible to say the least. And that's to put it lightly. When I look at Bryce Young in his rookie season, he had a horrible head coach in Frank Reich, one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL at that time. And Bryce Young, he struggled. He was the second most sacked quarterback next to Sam Howell. But you go out there, you bring in some more offensive linemen at the guard position with Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. You have to be off to a fast start. And that's what the Carolina Panthers are thinking. But they did more than just bring in some offensive line help. They went out there and they traded some key defensive pieces like Dante Jackson. They traded him to the Steelers. And they also finally traded Brian Burns to the New York Giants for a second and fifth round pick. For the ones that don't know, the Los Angeles Rams, a few years back, they offered the Carolina Panthers a deal for 2 first-round picks. Scott Fitterer said no. We're going to keep Brian on this roster. That was a terrible mistake, but Scott Fitterer is no longer here. You have a brand new general manager in Dan Morgan. But when you look at Bryce Young, his rookie year, he showed some good. He also showed a lot of bad. His number one wide receiver was Adam Thielen. And Adam Thielen is still a very good wide receiver, but he is now 34 years old. That's not the ideal situation for a rookie quarterback. So we carry over to year number 2. Dave Canales, a brand new head coach who was the former offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He did wonders for Baker Mayfield in his career with the Buccaneers. And he has also done some great work in the past with Russell Wilson. So the sky's the limit. And like I mentioned before, the first 2 games, they were terrible. Then they went out there and they started Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton, he won that game against the Las Vegas Raiders. And at that point in time, if you're a Panthers fan, you scratch your head and you say, hey, it may be time to really question Bryce Young and is he ready to be a quarterback in this league long term? And when I first covered this story with Bryce Young getting benched, I felt bad for Bryce Young, but I also was upset with how the national media came out for the Carolina Panthers. They were throwing the Carolina Panthers under the bus after the Carolina Panthers did everything that they could to bring in some more wide receiving help. They brought in Deontay Johnson at the time. They traded back into the first round. They didn't have a first round pick in this year's draft class, so they traded back in the first round to get Xavier Legette. So they put some more wide receiving talent around Bryce Young, and it gave him a very good offensive line from tackle to tackle. And the offensive line was not bad for the first 2 games. Bryce Young was still dealing with a lot of problems that he dealt with his rookie season, but he developed bad habits. Remember when I said he was the second most sacked quarterback in the league next to Sam Howell? He didn't trust his offensive line the first 2 games. He was very fidgety inside the pocket. He then step up into his throws. So it was a lot of underthrows. It was a lot of delayed balls going to the wide receivers and to the tight end position. And Bryce Young, he was seeing ghosts on the field, similar to what Sam Darnold saw when he was with the New York Jets. That is what happens when you put a young quarterback in a bad situation. But he would go out there and he would hold on to the football for too long and he would rush himself into pressure. And we saw when he got benched, it was really the best thing that has happened to Bryce Young so far, because he's never had to face adversity like this. This is a man that was a superstar at Alabama, Heisman Trophy winner. He was great. He didn't have to face the adversity with Alabama unless he went out there and lost a playoff game. And even then, he looked amazing on the big stage in college. At the pro level, Bryce Young never had to face that adversity until now. So they started Andy Dalton for 5 games. And they would lose majority of those games because their defense was so bad. And I'll talk about their defense in the second half of this video. But Andy Dalton would get into a car accident. And I'm glad that everyone is okay, him and his family. He hurt his thumb. He would not be able to play in that matchup against the Denver Broncos. So they bring Bryce Young back into the fold. Bryce Young did not look good against the Denver Broncos. On the opening drive, he did have a passing touchdown. But for the rest of the game, he didn't do anything until late in the fourth quarter. And against the Denver Broncos, he did not show that much potential. Bryce Young was 24 of 37, 224 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But something clicked. The next week against the New Orleans Saints, Bryce Young will win his first game this season as a starter. They beat the New Orleans Saints 23-22, and Bryce Young looked solid. 16-26 for 171 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception that was not on Bryce Young. The interception was on Xavier Legette. He throws the football down the sideline. The cornerback comes out of nowhere. He takes the football out of Xavier Legette's hand. So Bryce Young played a clean and efficient football game. But it was more than just Bryce Young in that matchup. The Carolina Panthers started to run the football at will with Chuba Hubbard. They finally found a true identity with their offense. Because remember, the year before, their offensive line was terrible in pass protection and also in run blocking. But this year, they took a massive step up in both run blocking and pass protecting. And you saw Dave Canales, who is their head coach and their main offensive play caller. He implemented a nice run scheme with the Carolina Panthers in the training camp and the full offseason. And you saw them carry it over against the New Orleans Saints. And then from that point forward, you will see Bryce Young actually look like the first overall pick against the New York Giants. They went overseas. They won that matchup 20-17. Bryce Young, 15-25 on the day, 126 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. Now you may say Bryce Young is not balling, but Bryce Young was improving on the field. He was improving on the film because he was stepping up into his throws. He was taking off with the football, and he gained his confidence back in this 3-week span. Even against the Denver Broncos, when he had his bad moments, you would see him go over there. He would shake his head. In the past, in those first 2 games against the New Orleans Saints and the Los Angeles Chargers, he looked distraught when he threw those interceptions. He had a sad look on his face. The body language was just bad. He had his head down. And anytime you have your head down, whether it's sports or just in regular life, that's not a good sign. That means that something is going on with that individual and they're lacking that confidence. But you saw Bryce Young. He's on the sideline. He's dancing. He's saying, let's go. He's getting happy on and off the field. On the sideline, you see him cheering up the team, saying, let's go. His breakout game, and I still think this is the best game that he has played so far as a pro. I know that we can go back to his rookie season and say what he did against the Green Bay Packers. That was an awesome game. Unfortunately, they lost that game, but this game right here against the Kansas City Chiefs, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs 30-27. He was 21-35 on the day, 263 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 0 interceptions. If their defense was able to go out there and hold up against Patrick Mahomes for just a couple of drives, they would have won this football game. And they were settling for field goals early in this matchup also. But you saw Bryce Young deal with pressure very well. They would send in a blitz. Bryce Young delivers the football to a guy like Xavier Legette. He delivers the football to Jalen Coker. He is reading the defense and he's putting the football where it needs to be. And these are things that we did not see his rookie season, but we saw when he was at Alabama, especially that last year with Alabama. We saw the poise inside the pocket. We saw the anticipation and we saw the deep field accuracy. And you look at Bryce Young, you're saying, okay, there's something here with this kid. Remember, when he had those first 2 games, didn't look good. 0 for 3, 0 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions. For the rest of the season, 15 passing touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Really, it was 15 passing touchdowns to 4 interceptions. 2 of the interceptions were not on Bryce Young. One of the interceptions, like I mentioned before, Xavier Legette had the football. Cornerback comes to take it out of his hands, and he had the interceptions against the Dallas Cowboys. I don't fault that on Bryce Young because their offensive line took a day off and they got outmatched by the Dallas Cowboys. But you saw Bryce Young perform better, especially down the stretch with the Carolina Panthers. And every single game, except for that game against the Dallas Cowboys, you saw him at points and times in certain drives put the team on his back. Does he look like a franchise quarterback every single week? Not just yet, but he does look damn impressive. I'm not going to come on here and say that he's going to be a top 5 or top 10 quarterback just yet, but you want to see that progression. When I look at his rookie season, that's a throwaway season. That's the same thing that I did with Trevor Lawrence. I don't count that first year, and I really don't count that first year with Bryce Young. Now, you can, but I don't. The reason why I don't, You had a bad head coach in Frank Reich, a completely bad coaching staff. Everyone is in this kid's ear. He's behind a terrible offensive line. They had no idea what the hell they were doing with Bryce Young. And you hear people in the front office, they were split. Some people wanted CJ, some people wanted Bryce Young. You know that Bryce Young caught wind of that. And how does that make him perform on the field? So they had to go out there, they clean house, they bring in Dan Morgan, they let him run the show at the general managing position. But to see Bryce Young go out there and bounce back from the adversity from being benched in favor of Andy Dalton, and you see Andy Dalton being encouraging of him moving forward, and the same with Adam Thielen, that's a great sign. And when you look at the Carolina Panthers, they went 5-12 this year. They lost 3 games by 1 score. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. Xavier Legette had a bad drop in that matchup, but their defense let Patrick Mahomes run right into field goal range. That is a terrible situation right there. Against the Philadelphia Eagles, Bryce Young looked very good yet again. He did throw an interception in that matchup. Xavier Legette wide open for a touchdown. He drops the football. They could have won that game. Now, their defense will have to go out there and help them out for the rest of the game. It was still some time left on the clock for Jalen Hurts and the offense of the Eagles, but that's a crucial situation. And I'm going to get on Xavier Legette in the next few minutes. Trust me, I have a lot of good things to say about him also in the future. But we saw them close out a game against the Arizona Cardinals. They beat them 36-30 in overtime. Bryce Young, 2 passing touchdowns, 158 passing yards. In the last game of the regular season against your division rival, the Atlanta Falcons, in overtime, you win that game 44-38. And Bryce Young had 3 passing touchdowns in that matchup. I definitely do believe that Bryce Young is going to be a very good quarterback moving forward. He just has to be more consistent and trust his offensive line and trust the players around him. He doesn't have to be Superman. And we saw him do this at Alabama. It was a lot of times he did not have the stacked Alabama team like Jalen Hurts had and like how Tua had. He did have Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield. But he was trying to go out there and make every single play on his own at the college level. He has learned, hey, I can go out there, I can deliver the football on the strike to Jalen Corker. He'll come up with the pass. I can deliver the football to Adam Thielen. He has my back, and I can trust my offensive line. I can finally step up inside the pocket. Because stepping up inside the pocket is a huge part of the reason to why a lot of quarterbacks are successful in this league. From Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, whoever. When those guys are able to go out there and step up into their throws, they can get some more power into those throws deep down the field. And Bryce Young, we all know the elephant in the room with him. He's not the biggest quarterback, but he does have an arm on him. Does he have a cannon? No, but he can push the football 50 yards down the field. Is it going to be great every single time? No, it's not. But he does have that accuracy and that anticipation, and he has that sneaky athleticism. As long as he can go out there and have his confidence and his offensive line can take care of him, the Carolina Panthers are going to be good on the offensive end with Bryce Young. Because figuring out the quarterback situation, that gets your head in the door, and then you can figure everything else out. But this was a very impressive season on the back end for Bryce Young. But we have to talk about the rest of the offense because it was more than just Bryce Young and the offensive line. Chuba Hubbard on the year was a superstar in the backfield. One of the best running backs in the NFL this previous season. He had 1,195 rushing yards on the year. And he averaged 5 yards a carry, 10 rushing touchdowns. Phenomenal. What does suck is the fact that he wasn't able to finish out this season because he did suffer a leg injury, but he doesn't have to have surgery in the offseason. Which also sucks is the fact that you have to depend on Miles Sanders for the last couple of games. Now, Miles Sanders has not been a good, consistent running back with the Carolina Panthers. And this regime, they did not pick him up. The reason why he is with this roster and he signed the contract that he did with the Carolina Panthers a few years ago is the fact that Frank Reich was the head coach and Deuce was the running backs coach. Frank Reich, former offensive play caller for the Philadelphia Eagles. Miles Sanders was with that roster. Deuce, former running backs coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was on this roster as well. So you have Miles Sanders. It doesn't make sense to cut him. Now, if Jonathan Brooks, who you selected in the NFL draft just a year ago, and you selected him high in the NFL draft, if he was able to stay healthy, you could possibly move off of Miles Sanders. And I still will not even come on here and say move off of Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders' contract will create a bit of a cap hit. Not a huge cap hit, but you don't want to go out there and just cut players for no reason when you need depth at that position. When I look at Jonathan Brooks, he has all the potential in the world. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL. Not once, but twice in the last few years. He tore his ACL at Texas in college. That's why he slid into the second round. He tore his ACL late in the season with the Carolina Panthers to the same knee. They should have set this kid out his entire rookie season. It was really no reason to play Jonathan Brooks. And I know he's a warrior. He wants to go out there. He wants to play. But sometimes it's best, if you're a coach, if you're a general manager, let's sit this kid on the shelf for this season. Let him fully recover from that ACL injury. Let's go with Miles Sanders. Let's go with Blackshear. Let's go with those running backs behind Chuba Hubbard. But they didn't do that. They wanted to have this mix of Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard, similarly to what they had many, many years ago when you had Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Hall. That would be a solid situation, but I look at Jonathan Brooks. He still has potential in this league. You may have to bring in another running back, but I think that Miles Sanders, if you can give him 8 to 10 touches a game to just give Chuba Hubbard a relief, you could be okay with that. You can still touch the running back position in the draft or in free agency, but just be careful with that because there's a good chance that Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks could still be a very good running back duo with the Carolina Panthers. It just comes down to Jonathan Brooks and his knee. The wide receiving position. I had a lot of negative things to say about Xavier Legette. He dropped the football against the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a major drop against the Kansas City Chiefs. He has had a lot of bad moments, but Xavier Legette has potential to be the best wide receiver with the Panthers. And he did finish the season very strong. You look at his numbers on the year. He had 49 catches for 497 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. He averaged a first down a catch, exactly 10 yards a catch. There's upside here. I think that all those drops are going to make him a better player in the future. Now, we've seen players in the past like Deontay Johnson. They still just struggle to catch the football on a consistent basis. But I look at Xavier Legette. He's a big body wide receiver. He's explosive going down the field. I compare him to a mini DK Metcalf. And Dave Canales did very good work with DK Metcalf when he was with the Seattle Seahawks. Let this kid go out there. Let him develop. The same way that Bryce Young had his struggles. The same thing with Xavier Legette. And let these guys grow together. I'm a sucker for letting young players grow together because it just helps build team chemistry. Bryce Young, second year in the NFL. Xavier Legette, year 1. Jalen Coker, year 1. Let those guys fully grow together. And having Adam Thielen still be the top wide receiver now is not a terrible situation because you have better wide receivers around him. When you look at what happened last year with Adam Thielen, you had Jonathan Mingo on the field. You had Terrence Marshall Jr. Those are not the best situation to put Bryce Young in. Those are not the best players to have around Bryce Young in that situation. But you have these young and up-and-coming wide receivers like a Xavier Legette, like a Jalen Coker, and a JT Sanders at the tight end spot. You're going to be okay. And speaking of Jalen Coker, he just came out of nowhere. Undrafted free agent. He came in and he was Mr. Consistent down the stretch. He did miss some time with injuries. But I look at Jalen Coker. They may have found a diamond in the rough here. I really like Jalen Coker a lot. On the year, 478 receiving yards, only 32 catches, and 2 receiving touchdowns. And he averaged 15 yards a catch. Let him go out there and let him carve out a role with the Carolina Panthers long term. Now look at Adam Thielen. They're going to bring him back. He has already confirmed to the Daily Mail that he wants to be back with the Carolina Panthers next season. Bring him back. He's Mr. Consistent. He will be 35 years old when next season starts. But he doesn't play like a 35-year-old. He plays like he's 25 or 26. He did miss some games this year dealing with a hamstring injury that he suffered against the Las Vegas Raiders. But he's very good going deep down the field. But the thing is with Adam Thielen, he's Mr. Consistent underneath. You can send him deep down the field. He'll draw out those penalties like how he did against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's not a great deep threat, but he's a good deep threat to have. And you're not going to expect for him to go down there on a consistent basis and be the same player down the field that he was with the Minnesota Vikings. But the intermediate routes, 15 to 20 yards, that's where he is still an elite wide receiver at, especially with catching the football. His hands, they're like glue. And his route running ability is still one of the best in the league. So keep him around. The tight end spot, you have Tommy Tremble, you have JT Sanders. Let those guys fully develop at the tight end spot. You can be okay right there, especially in short yardage situations. When I look at the offensive line from tackle to tackle, they're perfect. I like what they have. Brady Christensen, bring him back. He could play left guard, center, right guard. He could play all across the offensive line. Unfortunately, Austin Corbett did get injured in back-to-back years. Maybe he wants to come back for $2 or $3 million on a one-year deal. If that's the case, bring him back. If not, let him go to another team and then bring in another young center or guard and just do plug and play at that position. But it's a good chance that Austin Corbett can come back, but I doubt that he'll be a starting offensive lineman for the Carolina Panthers moving forward. So that's the offense. The offense, they have a lot of upside there. Let those guys fully develop. Let them grow. Don't go all in on T. Higgins. You don't need to do that. I like the wide receivers that you have. Let those guys fully develop. You don't want to take shine away from Leggett. You don't want to take shine away from Jalen Coker. Let them develop. I fear if you go out there and you bring in T. Higgins, not only are you're neglecting your defense, you're also taking some shine away from those young players, and they need those reps. The defense is where they need to spend majority of their money and their draft resources this year. Against the pass, they're in the bottom of the league. Against the run, they're the worst rushing defense in the NFL. Now, Coach EJ, their defensive coordinator, he was taking head coaching interviews last season. I highly doubt that he is a terrible defensive coordinator. Was he the best this year? No. Was he horrible at times? You can make the case. But overall, I do believe that he is a very good defensive mind. I have seen him in the past pump out good defenses for the Carolina Panthers. Now, against the run, they're going to have to be better because just last season, they were 26th. This season, you were 32nd. And you allowed over 3,000 rushing yards on the year. 3,000 rushing yards on the year. Only 4 teams have done that since the merger. That is not good. But it's not all on Coach EJ because the defense dealt with so many injuries. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, they really gutted this defense to go out there and bring in some more draft resources to help out Bryce Young. When you have DJ Wonnum and Jadeveon Clowney as your 2 best pass rushers, that's a problem. Now, DJ Wonnum, very good player. He just has to stay healthy. Jadeveon Clowney, he's old. He's going to try his best. He was never elite as a pass rusher in the first place. Even with the Houston Texans, when they selected him high in the first round, you saw him struggle to come off the edge against the pass many times when J.J. Watt was playing alongside him. And J.J. Watt was the best defensive player in the NFL by that time. Easily. Jadeveon Clowney still solid against the run, but he's just an older player. He's not the same. So you need to bring in an edge rusher. Abdul Carter would be perfect with the Carolina Panthers. The problem is this. You may have to trade up to get Abdul Carter, and even if you do trade up, he still may be gone because this draft class is not that great with the quarterback position. Now, if you had quarterbacks flying off the board, that means everyone else falls into place. And you could have a guy like Abdul Carter come in and help out the Carolina Panthers. But you can still select a very good edge rusher or a defensive tackle playing alongside a guy like Derek Brown, who missed majority of the season dealing with a torn meniscus. Personally, Mason Graham, if you can't get Abdul Carter, would be the perfect player to have him alongside Derek Brown. Just 2 nasty defensive tackles that can push the pocket and they can just stop the run on a consistent basis. And when you have 2 very good defensive tackles, it frees up a lot of space for those edge rushers because they're eating so much space in the middle of the offensive line. The linebacker position. This has been a problem with the Panthers, in my opinion, since Luke Kuechly retired due to his concussions. You slid Shaq Thompson into that position of being your best interior linebacker. Shaq Thompson is not a bad player, but he's no Luke Kuechly. They should have addressed this problem a long time ago, and they haven't done it since then. And Shaq Thompson torn Achilles this year. Just last year, he broke his leg, and that was not his fault. A Saints player was slammed on his leg by his teammate of all people. And I look at Shaq Thompson. They may not bring him back. You can bring him back out of loyalty, but it's not going to be an expensive contract. It could just be a 1 or 2 year deal. And I doubt that it will be a 2-year deal with Shaq Thompson. I don't see too many teams going out there and paying Shaq Thompson a lot of money over the course of 2 years. So the Panthers could bring him back on a 1-year team-friendly deal to just free up some cap space in the future. You take care of your veteran. He stays with the Carolina Panthers. It's a win-win for everyone. You have Trayvon Wallace. Trayvon Wallace has some upside. This year, he had some games that made you scratch your head and say, you know what, there's something there. But he also had moments that just made you say, please take him off the field. He's a young player. He was never supposed to be in this situation to begin with. And he ended the season on IR. You need to bring in some more linebackers to help stop the run. But it starts up front with your defensive linemen. They need DJ Wonnum to stay healthy. Maybe you bring back Jadeveon Clowney as a rotational veteran pass rusher. We'll see. But you have to go out there in free agency. Bring in some defensive linemen up front. You have Ashawn Robinson, solid run stopper. He's not going to get to the quarterback on a consistent basis, but you want to have some guys that can come in and give you something different in terms of stopping the run and getting to the quarterback. And the run fitting and the gap responsibilities have to be better. When I look at Patrick Mahomes, when he was able to run against the Carolina Panthers and get into field goal range, there was zero gap responsibility. That is on the players, but at the same time, Coach EJ, why are you not coaching this up? You have to have those responsibilities. And for the ones that don't know what I'm saying, when you crash in on the quarterback and you just free up those tackles and you're just pushing them towards the quarterback, it opens up rushing lanes for a guy like Lamar Jackson or a guy like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes to kill you. It's a scheme to it. You don't just go out there and just rush the passer and just bull rush it to his chest unless the coach tells you to. That's when you're running a stunt or a twist. In certain situations, if you're running a twist, you may have a defensive lineman come across and you may have your right end just go smash right into the face of the right tackle. But those are rare situations if you're running a blitz like a Brian Flores. You have to have that gap responsibility, and that starts with coaching with Coach EJ. And the linebackers have to be better. As far as the secondary, Michael Jackson, I think that he's a solid number 3 corner. As a number 2, not the greatest to have. And he's not a bad number 2, but you can find a better number 2 cornerback alongside J.C. Horn. Not too many quarterbacks are going to test out J.C. Horn because J.C. Horn is still a premier player in the NFL, and he's a premier defensive back. And you have Xavier Woods, who is a solid safety. But I look at the safety room. It's a lot of reports. They're going to revamp the entire safety room. They're going to bring in some new guys and bring in some new blood. So we'll see what happens with the defense as a whole. But when I look at the Carolina Panthers, majority of their cap space and their draft capital this year should go into their defense. And I trust Dan Morgan. Dan Morgan went out there. He brought in the offensive lineman. Offensive line was a problem. He brought in the offensive line. Coaching was a problem. He went in. He brought in the right coach, and Dave Canales. Even when things were going to hell with Bryce Young, he kept the team intact. And he kept Bryce Young and his spirits up high. And Bryce Young has said that Dave Canales was telling him, you're still our guy, but we're just taking a break. It's a reset. You're still our guy. And in practice, he'll go over to Bryce Young. I just want you to know, hey, we're still with you. Andy Dalton is a starter right now, but we're going to keep you in the fold. That's what top elite coaches do. And I hope that the Carolina Panthers can finally have a winning season. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers not having a winning season since 2017. That's the last time they had a winning season and went to the NFL playoffs. Since then, the most games they have won in the season was 7. And that came in 2022 and that came in 2018. And in 2022 is when they had Sam Darnold and Steve Wilks finish out the year. Hopefully, this can get the Carolina Panthers over the top, and hopefully we can see them finally have a franchise quarterback in Bryce Young. It will be their first franchise quarterback since Cam Newton. And it seems like nothing has been right with this franchise since Cam Newton hurt his shoulder against TJ Watt and the Steelers on a Thursday Night Football matchup. With all that being said, let me know in the comment section below, did I miss anything with the Carolina Panthers season recap? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God